There's a pump sitting at the bottom of a hill, somewhere in the countryside that has been lifting water 200 feet into the air, every single minute, for the last 40 years. Nobody has touched it. Nobody has plugged it in because there's nothing to plug in. It has no motor. It burns no fuel. It has no solar panel, no battery, no cord running back to a house. It just sits there in the mud next to a stream, thumping away like a slow heartbeat, pushing water uphill against gravity, for free, forever. And the strangest part isn't that it works. The strangest part is that almost nobody knows it exists. And in some parts of this country, the water it moves would technically make you a criminal. This device is called a hydraulic ram, and it's one of the most quietly brilliant machines a human being has ever built. It was patented back when Napoleon was still a young officer. It ran the water supply for entire farms, estates, and villages long before the power grid ever reached the countryside. And then in the span of about 2 generations, it vanished so completely that most plumbers today have never seen one. So what is it? How can a chunk of pipe and 2 little valves move water uphill, with no power whatsoever? And why did a machine this good get pushed out of our lives so thoroughly that using one can put you on the wrong side of the law? Let's get into it. To understand why this thing matters, you have to understand the problem it was born to solve. For almost all of human history, water only moved one direction on its own, and that direction was down. If you lived below your water source, life was easy, but most people didn't. Villages sat on hillsides, farms sat above the creek, and getting water from the low spot up to where people actually lived meant one thing: muscle. Somebody or some animal had to carry it, crank it, or haul it up a hill, bucket by bucket, day after day, for their entire life. Whole civilizations were shaped around this single stubborn fact of gravity. People got clever about it. The Romans built aqueducts that ran for miles just to keep water flowing gently downhill into their cities. Farmers built water wheels and hand pumps and windmills, anything to cheat gravity a little. But every one of those solutions needed something. It needed wind. It needed a strong back. It needed a mule walking in circles until it dropped. Nothing moved water uphill for free, using nothing but the water itself. That was considered impossible. You can't get more energy out of a system than you put in. Everybody knew that. And then in the 1770s, an Englishman named John Whitehurst built something strange in Cheshire. He rigged up a device that used the sudden stop of flowing water to give it a violent shove. It worked, but it needed a person standing there to operate a valve by hand, so it was more of a curiosity than a machine. The real breakthrough came from a name you already know, even if you don't know you know it: Joseph Montgolfier. Yes, that Montgolfier, one of the 2 brothers who sent the very first hot air balloon into the sky over France in 1783. A man obsessed with the way air and water and pressure behaved. In 1796, he took Whitehurst's idea and did something clever with it. He made it automatic. He designed a machine that would operate its own valve, over and over, with no human touching it and no fuel burning inside it. He called it the Bellier Hydraulique, the hydraulic ram, and it needed nothing but a stream and a little bit of a drop. Within a few decades, these things were everywhere. Country estates in England used them to pump water up to grand houses on the hill. American farms installed them by the thousands to fill stock tanks and feed irrigation ditches. There were companies whose entire business was building and shipping hydraulic rams all over the world. A farmer could set one up next to his creek, walk away, and come back a year later to find it still faithfully filling his tank at the top of the property. No bill ever came. No part ever needed replacing if it was built right. It was, for a very long time, simply how you got water where you needed it. So how does something with no engine actually pull that off? Here's the secret, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It runs on a phenomenon that plumbers usually consider a problem. You've probably even heard it in your own home. It's that loud bang in the pipes when you shut off a faucet quickly, that thud that shakes the whole wall. That noise has a name. It's called water hammer, and it's the sound of a mistake most engineers spend their careers trying to prevent. Because here's the thing about water. It's heavy and it's moving. When water is rushing through a pipe and you slam a valve shut in an instant, all that moving water can't just stop. It has momentum, like a freight train. And when a freight train hits a wall, that energy has to go somewhere. Inside the pipe, that energy turns into a sudden, ferocious spike of pressure. For a split second, the pressure inside that pipe can jump to many times what it normally is. It's a hammer blow made of water. Every plumber in the world tries to kill that spike. But Montgolfier looked at that violent burst of pressure and asked a different question. What if, instead of fighting it, you aimed it? What if you took that hammer blow and pointed it straight up a hill? That's the entire trick. Let me walk you through what's actually happening, because it's beautifully simple. You've got a stream, and the water is allowed to fall down a long pipe. We call it the drive pipe, gaining speed as it goes. At the bottom, that water rushes out through an open valve, the waste valve, and just dumps onto the ground. It's flowing fast now, really moving. And then something wonderful happens. The very force of that fast-moving water slams the waste valve shut. Instantly, and in that instant, all that momentum hits a dead end. Water hammer. A massive spike of pressure erupts inside the pipe, and it has nowhere to go except through a second one-way valve that pops open under the pressure and lets a small slug of water escape upward into a sealed chamber full of trapped air. That trapped air is the genius part. The pressure surge shoves water into the chamber and squeezes that air like a spring. Then the pressure in the pipe drops, the waste valve falls back open, and the whole thing starts flowing again. But that compressed air spring doesn't fall back. It pushes. It shoves its little slug of water on up the delivery pipe toward the top of the hill, and then, bang, the cycle repeats. Water flows, valve slams, pressure spikes. A little more water gets launched uphill. Thump, thump, thump. Once or twice every second, all day, all night, all year, each beat sends just a little water up the mountain. But those little beats never, ever stop. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking, because it's the same objection everybody has. That sounds like getting something for nothing, and that's impossible. And you're right, it is impossible, and the ram doesn't do it. Here's the honest truth of the trade. The ram takes a large amount of water falling a short distance, and it sacrifices most of it to lift a small amount of water a long distance. It doesn't create energy. It borrows it. Think of it like this. You let 10 gallons fall down a little slope, and in exchange, the machine throws 1 gallon up a big hill. The other 9 gallons just spill back into the stream where they came from, no harm done, ready to fall again. You're not cheating physics. You're trading the abundance of falling water for the height you actually want. As a rough rule of thumb, a well-built ram can push water up to around 10 times higher than the distance the water fell to power it. Give it a 6-foot drop, and it'll happily send water 60 feet up the hill. No motor, no fuel, no attention. Forever. And that word forever is not marketing. This is a machine with almost nothing to break. There's no electricity to fail, no gas to run out, no computer chip to fry in a storm. There are basically 2 moving parts, 2 valves flopping back and forth. That's it. There are documented rams that have run continuously for over a century, needing nothing more than the occasional new rubber flapper on a valve. Compare that to the pump you'd buy today with its electric motor, its pressure switch, its sealed bearings, its warranty that runs out right about the time it dies. One of these machines is designed to serve you. The other is designed to be replaced. So if this thing is nearly indestructible, costs almost nothing to run, and has been proven for over 200 years, why on earth did we abandon it? And why would anyone make it hard to use? The answer, like it always is money and control. And it comes in 2 parts. The first is the obvious one. In the middle of the 20th century, the power lines finally reached the countryside. Rural electrification changed everything. Suddenly, a farmer could buy a cheap electric pump, plug it in, and it would move as much water as he wanted, uphill, downhill, any direction, instantly. No stream required, no 6-foot drop to engineer. The electric pump was more flexible, and it was convenient, and convenience almost always wins. Nobody banned the ram. It just quietly stopped making sense to the salesman. Because you can't sell a replacement motor for a machine that has no motor. You can't sell a service contract on a pump that never breaks. The ram made no one any money after the day it was installed. And so, slowly, the companies that built them closed, the knowledge stopped being passed down, and a machine that once dotted the landscape simply faded out of memory. It didn't fail. It just wasn't profitable enough to keep alive. But the second part is the one that should make you uncomfortable, because it's still going on right now. To run a ram, you need a stream. And in much of this country, especially out west, you do not own the water that flows across your own land. Under old water rights doctrines, that water is legally spoken for, sometimes by someone miles away, sometimes by the state itself, sometimes by a farm that filed a claim on it 100 years ago. For years, there were places in America where collecting the rain that fell on your own roof was against the law. Diverting a creek to run a little pump that lifts water to your garden can put you in direct conflict with a body of water's law so old and so tangled that most people don't even know it applies to them. The machine isn't illegal. The independence it gives you is what makes people nervous. A family that can move its own water from its own stream up to its own home with a device that costs a few dollars and never sends a bill is a family that doesn't need the utility, doesn't need permission, and doesn't fit neatly into a system built on metering every drop. Nobody sat in a room and voted to ban the ram. They just built a world where quietly living off your own water became a paperwork problem you're not supposed to solve. So let's talk about how you actually build one, because this is where it gets fun. You don't need a workshop full of tools or an engineering degree. A working hydraulic ram can be assembled from standard plumbing parts you can pick up at any hardware store. A few feet of pipe, 2 check valves, a couple of fittings, and a sealed chamber to trap the air. People have built functional rams for the price of a nice dinner. You need a source of moving water, a stream, a spring, even the overflow from a pond. You need a bit of a drop, even a few feet will do. You run your drive pipe down the slope, hook up your 2 valves and your air chamber, aim your delivery pipe up toward wherever you want the water to go, and then you do the most satisfying thing in the whole process. You give it one push to start it, and you step back, and you watch a machine with no power source begin to beat on its own, thump after thump, sending water up a hill it has no business climbing. And I'm not going to just tell you it works. I'm going to show you, because I built one right here in my own yard, out of parts anybody can get, and I'm going to run it on camera and put a hose at the top of the hill so you can watch the water come out the other end with nothing driving it but the stream itself. No wires, no tricks, just old physics doing exactly what it did 200 years ago and what it would still be doing everywhere if we'd been allowed to remember it. Because that's really what this channel is about. So much of what actually made people self-reliant didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because working wasn't the same as being profitable, and because independence has a way of making the right people nervous. If digging up this kind of forgotten, buried knowledge is something you care about, then subscribing and sharing it is the simplest way to make sure it doesn't stay forgotten. And if a machine that moves water uphill for free amazed you, wait until you see what happens when you point that same falling water at a wall of spinning magnets. Because there's a way to pull real, usable electricity out of a tiny backyard stream, enough to run a home quietly forever. And the reason you've never seen one is a story for the next video, right here.